Gemma Jade, how's it going today?
I'm doing very well, thank you, and thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Actually, got connected with you through your publisher, who's actually connected me with a couple of other really great authors. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation just off of the last couple I had getting connected through them. So,
Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
for anybody that may not be familiar with who you are, what you do, before we get into your books, of course, I want you to let everybody know a little bit about yourself and a little bit about what you do.
Okay, cool.
Oh, did it cut out? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just didn't know if I should keep talking or
No, you're good as long as it didn't cut out. Yeah, you stopped talking. I didn't know if it cut out or something on your end. So yeah, you should be, yeah, you're all good as long as you can hear me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Mhm.
Oh, um, yeah. I'd start off with who you are, what you do, and how you got into it
Oh,
exactly.
I'm sorry. I didn't know if I should talk with the music. I'm so sorry.
Is
Okay.
there music playing?
There's very loud music playing.
I don't hear any music on my end at all. There, you don't hear it still, do you?
No, it was me. I had your show open in YouTube also. So I thought, I'm so sorry. When you said tell me about you, I went to talk and then the music started and I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess I should be quiet." So, I'm sorry.
Oh
That
no,
was
there's a
me.
little bit of a lag with the YouTube live, so that's what it was. Yeah, no, I meant to pass it over to you, and I didn't know if it cut out or if you weren't getting my audio or what was happening.
I'm
Because
so
sometimes it'll be
sorry.
a weird
So
cutout
sorry.
after we start recording. Sometimes, but no, yeah, we're all good. I'll clean it up in the post. No worries.
Okay. So, I am a physical medium and best-selling author on Amazon. I have been seeing spirits and all types of entities from all different places my entire life, basically. I really didn't understand what it was I was doing, communicating with the dead or things like that until I was a teenager. I remember having this really profound moment when I was 14 and realized, oh my gosh, like these are dead people. I don't know how it didn't register. I think I just thought everyone else could do it too, and we just something we don't talk about, right? Because I really didn't talk about it in my house. My dad was a Catholic and really didn't like the things I could see and do and the things I would say. So I just thought everybody could do this, and we just don't talk about it in the world. And then I saw the movie The Craft, and it kind of blew my mind open. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing these things without trying. So I had a pretty rough go of it once I realized that. It was very hard for me to kind of get my faith and my ability in line, right? And I still struggle with that sometimes to this day. But about 4.5 years ago, I decided to just go on YouTube and I tested the waters. I didn't go on as a medium or anything like that. I went on as someone interested in the paranormal. And I hooked up with someone from another channel and I did a bunch of live streams and guest appearances with that person with that channel before I finally started talking about myself and what it was I could do and reading oracle cards and trying to do it professionally on YouTube. And it worked for me. I absolutely love doing it. I have met so many amazing people and helped so many people, which to me is so cool to be able to do that through an ability that I've been terrified of half my life and didn't know what it was the other half, right? So it took me like 37 years to come to terms with who I am and what I can do. But I love it and I wouldn't trade it. And that's just me.
That's actually a lot of people that I've had on the show that are mediums and they come into their abilities. It's funny, they'll grow up in these primarily Christian houses where they don't want to hear anything about it and they end up like repressing it or not even they think that it's normal and nobody everybody else like you said is seeing what they're seeing. But it's kind of funny on the flip side. I always kind of mention this that from like the Christian perspective, of course, you could see it as like you're talking to the dead. Maybe it's something that has to do with like necromancy. But on the other side, I mean, you could definitely see it as some type of like a prophet ability. So I've always kind of been curious, at least with like the Christian households, if you know, you want to push it off altogether, but at least kind of give it a chance to kind of see what it's all about. Like if somebody's having these awful experiences with it, of course, kind of go from there. But if somebody's having these enlightening experiences where, you know, they're connecting family members and helping people pass on, then clearly that's some type of God-given ability, and it shouldn't have been something that is repressed, but rather something that's like glorified at that point.
Yeah, I agree. And I grew up, like I said, in a Roman Catholic household. My dad still does not want to hear about anything really going on with my ability. I'm a born again Christian myself, and it took me a while to reconcile it, but for me I see it as a gift because I know that like I'm not evil, right? So when I get things like you're a necromancer and this and that, I just pray for those people because that's what I do, that they'll come around to maybe not judging and understanding everybody is different. Everybody has something about them that someone else will look at and go, "Ooh, that's weird." Now mine's a little bit of a big thing, but I really do try to dedicate my life, my work, everything I do to helping people. I always want to be doing that. And as long as I'm doing that and people are telling me I'm doing that, I'm good with me. I mean, I went through addiction struggling with this for 5 years of my life. And it really was because I didn't know how to deal with what I was going through, because if you talk to it to someone, you're the weird person. My dad kind of shut it down. Now, my mom's 100% Native American. She's half Cherokee and half Iroquois. She knew exactly what was going on, and she would try to give me little bits and pieces of it, but we didn't want to mention it because my dad just was so adamantly against it. And funny story, nowadays, even with my father, if I get a message from my grandmother, his mom who passed, or any of his family members or anyone he knew, I will have to tell him that I had a dream that so and so came to me and gave me a message. If I tell him, "Oh, I had a visit from so and so," he will shut me down immediately. But if I tell him I had a dream, he'll be like, "Oh my gosh, that's so crazy," and he'll believe me. It's people don't want to open their minds sometimes. They can't grasp the reality that there's more than this.
Sometimes it's the context too, because I know that like at least in the Bible, it's mentioned a few times about these like prolific dreams. So that seems like it's something that's a little bit more acceptable within that context. But also, kind of bouncing into your gift, I'm always fascinated with the ways that people receive this gift. What exactly is your gift? Do you hear things? Do you see things? Like I know everybody's a little bit different.
I'm what most people would call a physical medium. So what that mainly is, there's a couple parts to it. The main thing is I can communicate with spirits. Normally they come to me just like you and I are talking right now. I have a few around me basically at any and all times. I don't go out much because everybody has dead. So if I'm in the grocery store and there's 90 people there, there's actually like 700 because there's everybody's you know it's hard. And now that I'm getting older, it is draining on my body, blood transfusions, and it does kind of, because it's like dead energy. But when they come to me, they'll come to me just like a regular person. The only way I know that they're different is, number one, they're usually dressed in some kind of funky way. Number two, if they come in like their death face, like with whatever injuries they had when they passed. Or number three, they have a different aura than a human being. Their energy is obviously different, it's dead, not living. So I'll be able to tell right away. Okay, when I was younger, I couldn't. So I couldn't tell like who am I talking. I took me a while. But the other thing about me that really, really overwhelms me, that I just started being able to deal with, is if I go out, I will literally know. Like, did you ever? I don't know if you've ever seen True Blood, or if any of your audience ever watched it. How Sicky Stackhouse can kind of hear everyone's thoughts. I can't hear thoughts, but I know. Like, I will know, like, the people behind me in the restaurant, they're cheating on their spouses. The cook in the back, he like hits his wife. The waitress just did drugs in the bathroom. Like, it's like overload. And I'm just learning how to control that and deal with it. So I spend most of my time indoors.
Oh, I can only imagine. It's like sensory overload at that point, especially if you're have multiple facets to your abilities too. Because I know some people, they can only hear, some people can only just see things. But if you can see, hear, and you also have things that can like touch and interact with you, it's
Yeah.
all overbearing on like all concepts. And even the extended ability of being able to read people beyond the people that are already dead too. That's like not only are you getting it from the things that
Yes.
nobody can see,
Yes.
but also the people that are around, like
I
just
always say that.
bombarded from all angles.
Coming from all directions. And I've gotten really good at it. I've gotten really good at reading people. I'm one of those people, though. I'm a Pisces sun, and I do believe very heavily in astrology. I'm one of those people where, like, you can BS me to my face and I will convince you that I believe all of it and I'll never bring it up again. But I know, right? Like, I tell people, I always know whether I call you out or not. I know. So if I start being weird with you, think about what you might have lied about or what you might have done because I'll know, right? And but I'm not like that person that's going to be like, I know you're lying. I used to do that a lot, but then people would be like, "Well, how do you know?" I don't have tangible evidence. I just know, dude. Like my guides told me, or I sniffed you out. I don't know. Um, but I, I try to shut it off when I go out. Like if I'm with my family, it can be very overwhelming, but it's a good thing to have, right? I know who I can trust and who I really shouldn't, and who's being honest and who isn't. My kids always, I'll be like, "You're not lying to me, are you?" And they're like, how? Like, how did we lie to you, right? I might not know exactly what happened that you're lying about, but I will know that you're lying 1,000,000%. And usually I'll know what about.
Yeah, usually like kind of you were describing, it's more of like a sense than like a literal thing of like projected or like reading thoughts. It's more like a
Yeah.
you get this like feeling or you get this like connotation of like a feeling from it, which
Yeah.
I think kind
It's
of has
energy.
almost to do with more of a like energy aura concept that if somebody's feeling guilty, they push off like a certain energy or if whatever like it ends up being exchanged through like an energy output rather than it being
Yeah.
like a specific reading of somebody's mind specifically, which I know there's
Right.
some people that can do that specifically, but that
Yeah.
seems to be way more on an advanced side than the
Yeah,
typical
for
gut
sure.
feeling
And
being able
and
to
I've had people
interpret.
be like, "Oh, like what color underwear am I wearing?" And it's like it doesn't work that way, right? I have energetic psychism. I don't have x-ray vision. I'm like, "Are they your moms? Like why are you asking me?" Right? Like I don't take crap from anyone. I get a lot of, online bullying, the trolls come, but the people who really want to understand are there mainly people with similar abilities to me who had the same thing I had growing up. I was born in 83. We didn't talk about this kind of stuff, and now they have someone in me that they can come to, and I don't judge them, and I tell them, "Well, when I was in that situation, I did this," and really try to help them through that. There's an awakening happening collectively with everybody, with whatever side you're on and whatever you believe, it's happening all around you. And I feel like the more of the collective that we have aware that there are other entities, realms, that there's spiritual warfare happening right in front of our eyes and all around us every single day. And the more people we have aware of that, alert to it, and working with their abilities, the more chance we have of really overcoming a lot of the, I mean, I hate to sound cliche, but evil in the world.
Just out of curiosity too, since you kind of brought up a little bit of like the evil in the world, as far as your gifts go, are you able to see some of these other beings that aren't necessarily, the undead, but rather like these otherworldly beings that have multiple different names? Some people want to call them demons, some people want to call them, dark entities. But have you ever had any experiences with these things yourself?
I usually go with the simplest term. I say demon, but I do tell people it's not how you think it is. Even with like the devil, there are many devils. There's not a devil. It's so much, but like I usually will just use the most common term. So demons, my first experience with one of them, I was little and I would get overloaded. I didn't know what was happening. I was like 8, 9 years old, and I would go. I had this tiny little closet in this apartment my dad rented for us. My parents rented for us, and I would hide in the closet. And there was literally like no room to move. So I would just curl up and I would feel better and I'd feel safe. But one night I got up to use the bathroom and this troll looking, it was, 3 feet high, big pointy ears. I mean, could have been right out of a storybook,
Like an imp or
except
something
for,
almost?
I'm sorry?
Like an imp or something almost?
Just like that, but when it peeked out in the darkness, its eyes glowed this bright green color and its smile went all the way up to like its temples. It was very evil, very demonic, very lower vibrational, and it scared the crap out of me. It took over my safe space. And that was my first experience. And I tell people too, it's not just demonic. I mean, there are entities from unlimited, infinite amounts of realms, right? So I'll say usually, that's not demonic, but it is lower vibrational. And then I'll explain to people about that because it's not all good versus bad and good versus evil. There are some things that are in between. And the one thing I see all the time are like these dark attachments that people have. They usually float around like in the atmosphere. Everyone, the way I see them, and this is different for everyone with, any different kind of ability, but like I'll see them with a funnel kind of thing on top of their head. Everybody I meet, if the funnel is big and like moving, they have ability. If it's not, they usually don't, or they're not connected with it at least, right? It's usually the non-believers that have that. But what these things do is they just swoop in and just right in, and then they attach. And most of us start gaining these attachments when we're like 8, 9, 10 years old. When we start understanding that the world isn't as safe as we're taught, that it is. And they come and go, these ones, but they do feed off of us. It's where a lot of illness comes from, are these things. I see them all the time, everywhere. Shadow beings, demons. I mean, I've seen it all almost, except black-eyed kids. I've never seen those, thank goodness, because they're the only thing I'm afraid of.
Yeah, those got something else going on with them. That's like a whole other weird realm. Like, are they related to the
Yeah.
Men in Black? Are they something paranormal, like
I
alien?
wrote a
There.
book on them, and I'm like, the one thing I've never encountered, obviously for the most part, but it's the one thing that terrifies me, like listening to stories about them. I'm like, good. But I'm like, in a way, it's bad, because if I did encounter them, I would probably know what they were immediately. That's the thing. If I go into someone's house to see what's going on in their house, their home's haunted, they think it's a demon, I'll go in and be like, oh no, that's not a demon. This lady lived here 100 years ago, kind of like the Dead Files type thing. I used to do that, and I would do it for friends and stuff. And I would go in, and what these things do is sometimes they'll take the form of something else. So they might be afraid of me, that I can see them, so they'll try to turn themselves into a giant shadow beast demon thing. But really, it's just a scared, lost soul. Or it will be a demon, and as many people in this community know, they like to take on the guise of little children, very innocent children, to kind of pull people in. And I'll be like, no, 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 that is not a little. I will know immediately, just by the energy surrounding whatever it is, whether it's, higher vibrational, lower vibrational, somewhere in between, and what its intentions are.
You're kind of hitting base on a couple of things that I've been talking about on the show lately. First, you're talking about the attachments, which is this concept that I've been talking about that is kind of hard for a lot of people to understand when it comes
Yeah.
to these type of things. That the best way I can relate it is that these things are almost like a parasite, that the parasite itself isn't inherently evil, bad. It's just doing what it's intended to do. And
Mhm.
it's not that it's intentionally, purposefully trying to hurt something. It's just, it's trying to survive. So it's doing its bare minimum function, and it doesn't have that conscious recollection to say, is this moral? Is this bad? It just functions and does as it does. And I think that that's the deal with a lot of this stuff that we're calling like dark. Yes, it is doing something bad to us from our perspective, but from its perspective, it's just trying to live. It's like a
It's its
parasitic
nature.
type of being. It's just exactly, it's existing, not intentionally being good or evil. And you actually brought up another point that I've been talking about with a lot of like the phenomenon as far as like the kids and all these different things that people are seeing, that I feel like there's a lot of like people will put a thought of something existing into a place. Like, just a prime example, like say that there's these stories about this building that has this like lady that's been living here forever. She died, she was a witch, blah blah blah, like the typical story that never even happened. That was just something that's completely made up. But it's been so much entwined into the mental of that society that now there's this like archetype that's existing, and
Tulpa.
these dark beings will try to slide into that archetype. And it's not that they're that entity or that being, it's just that people have put enough thought into this area that they've created the idea of this thing so that this entity will basically come in and like take the body of it. And I think that's what happens with a lot of these like paranormal locations, is that people are thinking like, all right, this is the conscious spirit of this specific person. And more often than not, I don't think a lot of people necessarily stick around, but rather, especially like the kids, I don't think the kids
Yeah.
necessarily always stick around. But
It
if
is
there's that
very rare.
opportunity, something will slide into that and take advantage of that opportunity.
Take on that guise. Yeah, for sure. That's a really great way to put it. I mean, the biggest example I give of that, that's almost like a tulpa type thing. I mean, tulpa's more our energy put something into being, but it's kind of the same concept, like with Slender Man. Why do some people go into haunted buildings and they contact the spirits that were said to be there for 200 years, or they contact the demon that's said to be haunting the place, and then 10 other investigative teams or 10 other investigators go in and they find nothing? Why is that? It's not that the one or two people that saw it were lying. It's exactly what you just said. It's that they believed so much and their energy was so into it, they almost, I don't want to say they manifested it, because it's a little different, because it is an entity, but they manifested that idea for that entity. And that entity's like, all right, cool. I'm going to do what I do. And a lot of them just feed off of our fear. Like they, like, you know, um, shadow entities. Most of the ones I've met are very, very dangerous, and they do want to kill us. And I've seen people dragged where the shadow people want to take the person with them, to trying to drag them through walls. I mean, tormented and tortured. Shadow beings have tried to compel me when I was little to do things like jump in front of buses or chew on wires, or and it took all of my strength to not do what these things were trying to compel me to do. They're very dangerous, but they also like they feed off of us. They would end us if I wrote a book about them too, if they didn't absolutely need us for survival. And the black eyed kids, I think it's the same thing. People are like, what happens to people who let them in? I don't believe anyone really ever has, but I do believe that's enough for the BEK. They want that fear of the initial reaction of the human being. I don't think the point is for them to get into the house. I think the point is to make the human think they want into the house and be terrified. And then they feed and they leave because they never visit the same place twice, as far as I've found. And I've done a ton of it. It took me a year and a half to write that book.
I'm glad that you brought up the Black Eyed Kids thing because I haven't actually gotten to talk about this on the show for a while. So I'd love to
Okay.
dive into your book as a whole about the Black Eyed Kids. But
Yeah.
um, as far as like that phenomenon goes, I don't know if you've come across any of these stories, but I've heard at least one or two of people that have supposedly have like let them in, and it seems like at least the one that I read, they let him in and they basically had some type of physical altercation, and then these things ended up like taking off on him, and that was like the end of the encounter. But I mean, there's obviously very few in between with these things, and I mean, they could simply turn into missing person cases, and there could be a lot more people letting these things in than we realize. But I guess a good spot to start off. Have you come across any of these cases where people have supposedly actually let them in?
It's funny. I did come across a couple, but I came across so many, but I didn't believe most of them. And I said that in my book. I'm not putting anyone down. Like, say what you want to say. If that was your experience, cool, but it's not getting into my book because it doesn't sound, I confronted them at the door and I said, I know what you are, show yourself. And they turned into insectoids. And I'm like, that didn't happen, right? Like, if it did, like, it's just a little unbelievable to me. But I was like, okay, that's cool. Like, I'm not trying to discredit you. I'm not going to put that in my book. But the thing for me too is I actually said that in my book about, and I will get into one encounter that I know for a fact happened of someone kind of letting them in, because I spoke to the people and Nick Redfern like investigated it. So many of these big names investigated these people and spoke with them and interviewed them, and it's very, I believe it's very true, like from the bottom of my heart. But I said in my book that I really like, all right, I'll come back to that because I kind of lost my thought because I'm so excited because I love talking about them. So the one case that I okay, wait, I got it. I got it. I'm all over the place. I said in my book that I wonder if like some of these unsolved murders, I tried looking into unsolved murders in like areas where people have had a lot of interaction or supposed encounters with them, where people were like exsanguinated, or if there was like anything. That's so hard to do, right? Like I'm just one person, so I didn't find anything. Then I'm like, are the BEK like missing kids or something? I'll tell you what I think they actually are, when we're done. But the one case that was believable, and I truly do believe it happened, they didn't let the BEK in on purpose. What happened was there was this mom and her son. The age varies depending on where you read it, but I believe the mother herself said the child was like 8 years old. She picked him up from somewhere. He was sitting in the back seat with his seatbelt on, and she had to run into the store to grab like milk and bread, right? And it was like a corner store, a little bodega, we call them where I'm from, little corner store. She knew the guy behind the register, so she tells her son like, I'll be right back. She turns the car off, she runs in, she gets what she needs to get, she comes out. She on autopilot, so she gets in the car, she turns it on, she looks in her rearview mirror to adjust it, and she sees her son sitting in the back with this pale faced kid, and this is broad daylight, mind you, it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This pale faced, fully black eyed kid with its arm around her son, just smirking at her in the mirror. She she jumps out, the car is still running. She grabs her kid, pulls him out, leaves the doors open, she runs back in. She's so frantic that she can't get the words out. And the guy who knew her, who worked there, was like, I'm going to call the cops. She's like, no, 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 don't, let me call my husband. She tells her husband, she's like, I can't talk about it. I can't even imagine what just happened. I'll talk to you about it when we get home. I'm not getting back in that vehicle. Come here with your car. I'll take your car. You take this home and we'll talk about it. So the husband's like, okay, like whatever you say, weird. And he gets there. She gets in his car. She makes it home with the kid. He gets into a severe car accident. Now he ends up being okay, but he gets into a car accident within like 3 minutes of getting into the car. And he said the last thing he remembered was a terrible odor and seeing like black eyes in the rearview mirror. And then he just blacked out and crashed the car. He was fine. The mother asked the little kid, was that a friend from school? Or like, why was he in our car? Trying to be calm, not freak the kid out. And the kid's like, no, mommy, he just knocked on the window and asked if I wanted to play and if he can come to our house and play. And I told him, yeah, get in. This little kid was sick for 18 months. He had like pneumonia. They would treat the pneumonia, then he had measles, then they would treat the measles, then he didn't have that. It was on and on and on until the family finally said, we're going to go back to church and we're going to have the congregation pray over him for 24 hours. Once they did that, the kid bounced right back, not sick anymore, never saw a BEK again, and never like relapsed into any of the sicknesses. That's the one verified account that I've ever found of a BEK that let them in, quote unquote.
That almost kind of makes you wonder if it almost kind of fits somewhat of the vampire lore. And as far as
Mm-hmm.
like the vampire lore goes, like I think that that's something that's kind of become like telephone of something that we may have actually been dealing
Yeah.
with, kind of like the whole werewolf thing kind of getting blown up from like these dog-headed beings and this whole kind of dogman
Yeah.
concept. But um as far as like these things go, I'm kind of wondering if it's a matter of one, almost like the whole vampire thing, or like this like the contract concept with like demons, that you have to have this exchange where you openly let them in, and you're let them in specifically through a
Invitation.
doorway, which is also part of that whole soul contract concept of like letting these things in. And then in turn from there, once you let them in, it seems like they might use that opportunity to basically drain all this negative energy from you. It almost kind of like the same concept as like a vampire, but rather than drinking blood, they want to vampirically suck all of this negative energy off of you. But unlike other things, they kind of have the ability to like push these events into action because you let them in. So it seems like they have more energy and more physical manipulation towards you because of the fact that you had that verbal contract of letting them in. It's almost like they only show themselves physically because it's kind of hard to gain access unless you have a physical variation of yourself like requesting the access.
Yeah, and I'm laughing and shaking my head silently over here because it's like you read my book. I literally said the same thing. What if they are the quote unquote vampires that we know, except it was more interesting for people to say they drained blood instead of draining our energy. And I do believe there's something with them. I know they're from another realm, but
That could be
I'm
a matter
wondering
of
if they're like,
language too, using blood
oh my
versus.
god, I've heard the craziest things that they've said too, like the BEK. Is it food time? And I have so many stories in my one book. I'm fascinated by this topic. It's the one topic I always steer the conversation to because everybody's like fascinated by these stories. But I said the same exact thing in my book. It was like, is it like kind of a I can't think of the word right now, but like a synonym, right? Like we traded the energetic exchange that most people wouldn't really understand to this being that like drinks blood. And I do think they might be hybrids gone wrong. Like they don't look enough human to be here, but something went like messed up with them, so they can't stay with their extraterrestrial parents. So they're like, meh, leave them on Earth and like throw them out of the spaceship or something. I mean, it sounds flippant, but I do wonder is that I've also covered a couple of stories in my book with handlers, people who have gone to homes of like strangers. I picked up this chick in the bar and we went home and did what we did, but I woke up the next day and there were black-eyed kids all in her kitchen, right? Are there human beings handling these kids? I don't it's the concept is so massive and there's so many different ideas and theories out there. They do tend to cause sickness though. And I found some native tribe, I say it in the book, but I can't think of it off the top of my head. They actually found statues in several places around the United States specifically from like when just the Native Americans were here, and they were statues of children with obsidian stone for their eyes, white pale statues of children, and they were just like in these villages or like buried or unentombed or untombed. And it was like they're so ancient, but like why are they showing back up, or are they showing back up, or we just the internet is kind of a good way for us to be able to talk about it.
I mean, even on a flip side, it almost kind of makes you wonder if these things would evolve over time, because it seems like once you become aware of this apex predator, everybody teams up to take this thing out. So these things kind of have to figure out a new way to kind of live amongst the people. I mean, you kind of look back into like all the giant stuff, And it's like when they were living in tribes, you'd have these giant assaults where everybody would come in and destroy them all, and then they'd live in these like little segregated groups
Yep.
throughout. So I mean, it kind of wonder makes you wonder if it's like a continuation of the phenomenon that they've adapted to be a little bit sneakier, a little bit different, or even just be able to harness energy in a different way. And in turn, it makes it so that they can people still kind of talk about him, but the presence isn't as known, meaning that there's not this like physical dead body in front of people. Rather, it's something that's
Right.
disconnected from them because if somebody gets
Yep.
into a car accident, nobody's then to say, oh, but they had this weird encounter with these kids a couple of weeks ago. But back in the day when they'd
Absolutely. The
have this first
connection.
physical encounter with these things and the last encounter they had was with this person that they were like, all right, there's something off about them, then they kind of know which way to go to. So it's almost like getting better at that survival tactic of knowing how to hide themselves amongst everybody.
Yeah, here on Earth, because I believe the BEK, there are a few other, entities, but the BEK are definitely not from here. Like they're from somewhere. I don't know if it's, outer space, which honestly, from what I understand, outer space is just another one of the dimensions, right? It's another realm. It's not necessarily out there. Some of it is, but it's people don't understand too, like everything is so connected. But most people, like I always use my husband as an example, and I wrote it in the book. I'm like, it's not me that I'm worried about. He is a complete and total non-believer. He believes there's something that goes on with me, but he doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to hear about it. Like I'm a millennial, he's a boomer. He don't want anything to do with it. But I'm like, he would see two little kids out there and open the door. They wouldn't even have to knock more than once. He'd be like, "Oh my gosh, kids in trouble," and he'd open the door, and that's the end of it, right? Now they're in my house, and I do worry. I live in the middle of the woods. I always tell people, like, the Snow White house, that's my house, made of stone in the middle of the woods, nobody around, no sidewalks, neighbors, no public transportation. I'm just here, right? And like this would be the optimal place. There's also things around here that I see a lot that now that I've seen it once in like the woods, I've come across it many times. There's this beast demon thing that has been trying to get on my property. I don't like to say really I'm a witch because I'm a Christian, and I just say I'm a Christian witch. And if you want to know what that is, I tell people I'll talk about it. Otherwise, just take me at my word. But I do have to protect my property. So I thought I was keeping this thing out, which I was, but now it's like more determined. So now it's more like nobody else in my family can see it, but I know it's there and I hear it at night. So I'm wondering, like, now that I'm aware of it, I've seen it at like a friend's house, someone that lives like 5 blocks away. I went, she just has a regular backyard. I saw it back there. So am I just more aware with the BEK thing? How I connected this is like now that more people are aware, are they just becoming more aware that they're around now, right? Or have they always been there and just now, like I said, we can talk about it?
I mean, it kind of makes you wonder too if it's a matter of once you become aware of the phenomenon, if it changes. Like, rather, we talk about these things like they're all like something physical, but yet we always talk about them being from some other place. So, if you take into consideration that these things may not be physical in the sense that we interpret in our reality, meaning that they could possibly change their form because maybe it's
That's a great point.
malleable within our physical reality. I mean, as soon as they get somewhat figured out, they just change the face of the phenomenon. And this kind of goes into the whole thing that they're talking about like the Mothman prophecies and everything that they phenomenon is continuously changing. There, as soon as you feel like you catch up with it, it changes into this new other thing. And I mean, maybe it's just one type of thing that we're dealing with that just knows how to stay one step ahead of us, and we're just dealing with this other. Or on the other
Yeah.
side, it's a matter of there's all these other different groups of beings and entities, and you got to expect that they're going to progress the same way that we are. Because I mean, diving back to 50 years ago versus now with the UFO phenomenon, like think about how much our technology is upgraded. So, like, something on the other side, of course, their technology, their advancements are going to upgrade too. So,
Yeah.
why would their phenomenon stay exactly the same? Because ours isn't, wouldn't on the flip side of it.
Wow, you are such an interesting person to talk to. A lot of people, and I love everyone I've done interviews with. It's no shade, but a lot of people can't like keep up. Um, I love that you have all these amazing ideas that are outside of the box that we put everything in. Because you're right, they are from somewhere else, and there's numerous, multiple encounters that I've had people tell me where they've heard a popping sound either before or after an encounter with a BEK, and I mean a loud pop, pop real loud, like a gun bang or gunshots. Now, that's something I experience a lot when I'm dealing with things coming like the fae coming from their realm into like my yard, or when I saw a glimmer man on a tree over here that was trying to like lure my son into the woods. Once we turned and walked away, I heard that pop so loud, like it reverberates in your head. And I think people sometimes, especially people who don't have abilities or people that aren't enmeshed in this community, forget that we're human and we're subject to the laws of our reality, but we're actually spiritual beings, right? We're just living this human experience, for as cliche as that is. But other entities that come here, they can pass through. Why do you think Bigfoot, like, he's here one minute, gone the next? Because he's going through portals that we may or may not be able to see.
This is where a lot of I feel like the blue, specifically blue orb phenomenon seems to come into plays because this is something that I talk about all the time on the show that if there is this other reality, there's got to be some type of like energy transference that comes from the other side. Be it again like you were kind of mentioning this popping sound because of course there's going to be this like breaking of the air meaning like some type of vacuum or something being created for like a split
Yeah,
second where that transference is happening. Or on the other side, even like weird electrical phenomenon happening, like things getting drained, because of course if you open something up maybe it's going to suck energy in and then reclose itself back out. So no matter what there's going to be this like strange energy transference that happens with these things coming from this other side. But the hard part is trying to find these constants between things because it seems like no matter what the phenomenon is, whether it's Sasquatch, paranormal, or even like extraterrestrial, it seems like whenever people have like missing time situations, anything like that, or anything where it seems like there's this weird bending of like time and space, there's usually these like blue orbs that are attached to that phenomenon. And like I said, it's there's got to be if we put enough time and effort into it to try to find these like certain specific connecting things to know that this is specifically the sound it makes when like a when a portal
a
opens
portal
or like
opens.
yeah
Yeah.
when the veil breaks at the specific spot because we're kind of hitting this spot where with a lot of this research like for a lot of people it might kind of sound like the woo woo but it's starting to connect in with a lot of like what mainstream science is starting to progress into and that's the hard part with a lot of this stuff is that a lot of people want to relate everything to being woo woo not realizing that if you start looking into the more obscure fringe science like all these magical concepts are actually starting to connect with like real world concepts. It's just a matter of looking in the
Absolutely.
right place and connecting the right dots.
Yeah, and honestly, some people just are not open to it. um you know my house used to have entities and presences. I am who I am, so I'm followed around constantly by spirits. My husband is not open. He will probably never see it or experience any of it. And some people really are like that, where it doesn't matter what happens right in front of them, either their mind won't accept it or they literally will not see it. It happened. My stepfather was a non-believer his whole life, and I remember saying, what is it going to take for you to believe? Like, you raised me, you lived with me. He's like, until someone that died taps me on the shoulder and says, yo, you got to believe in me, I'm not believing. But on his deathbed, he was freaking out. Like, there are these little green goblins and tuxedo men tipping their hats to me. And like, this was like, he might have been a mobster in the 80s. I don't want to put that out there, but maybe. So this is that type of guy we're dealing with here. From New Jersey. But in the last couple of days of his life, he was seeing these entities that might have been around him the whole time, right? Because I had told him a few times, like, yo, so and so's with you, or um, some people just aren't physically or energetically, I should say, able to be open to this. And I know for a fact our military is investigating all of this, and that's where a lot of the science is coming from. Not to be too conspiratorial, um, but there are like legitimate scientists that are looking into this type of thing because it's no longer making sense, right? If you look at our technology, just going back to extraterrestrials, we have not changed the toothbrush since like 1800 and something, right? Yet when the conspiracy theorists and the quote unquote woo woo crazy people say that, what was it, Eisenhower, I think it was, made a deal with ETs to that they can abduct people in exchange for technology. Well, it's kind of funny how since he was president, we've had all of this technological advance. But before then, we had the same thing as a toothbrush for like 130 years or like a really, really long time, right? We couldn't even conceptualize something new to brush our teeth, for a small example. But then the minute he allegedly made this deal or plan with ETs in exchange for technology, we have all of this insane technology in the next 50 to 80 years.
And it's funny because it seems like we've gotten to a point where it's like starting to re-stagnate again. And as it's starting to re-stagnate, the UFO phenomenon's picking up, which again, back
Yep.
then when all this technology picked up was when all the UFO phenomenon was picking up. So
Hmm.
it almost kind of seems like you got to throw out the cover story a little bit, you know?
Even in Jersey, we went through the drone thing a few months ago, and nobody really claimed that. And for me, a lot of it that I was seeing on YouTube was just people with drones being like, "Oh my gosh, there's a drone outside." But like living here, that was creepy for me. I didn't get any visits from ETs at that point, which like I thought if that was what was going on, I would. I've been visited by them before. I've been taken by them before, but I didn't get any of that. So I still don't understand what that was. And it's like the cover stories they're coming up with. Oh, it was this military base. Oh no, wait, it was this science place, It was the and it's like, okay, well, there are several official things on record that these were. And yet like they all contradict one another.
It's one of
And
those things
nobody's
that's
asking
always going to
anymore.
live in obscurity where we're
It
never going
is.
to honestly know the true
Absolutely.
answer to it. I mean,
Not in my lifetime. No way.
I mean, I definitely don't think it was anything extraterrestrial related. I mean, maybe
Mm-mm.
the intention was to usher in maybe something Project Bluebeamish, but I honestly think that they were our drones and we were trying to do something that wasn't necessarily like supposed to be on the books. So we
Mm-hmm.
just kind of use it as like a cover up because it may have been even like a test run just to see if we could potentially find somebody using these drones. Because I mean, at that point, it's almost like a minority report type concept that if you can use these things before anybody even conducts anything bad, or you're looking up somebody on the internet and you see that they're starting to become an extremist, and then you just have these drones watching them from every angle. Like, again, it seems like something that's advanced enough that you couldn't just openly be like, all right, we're going to start testing this out. You'd have to just roll it out and be like, oh man, I don't know what happened. And then
Yep.
20 years from now, all of a sudden, it's just
Not
going to
it.
be part of what we do, you know?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. It was so freaky and creepy. I went on a friend's show, Michigan UFO Paranormal, and they were like, "So you're there. What is it?" I'm like, honestly, like my guides haven't told me anything. I haven't gotten any visitations. Like it doesn't seem like it's anything like spiritual or otherworldly, right? It seems like it is something going on right here. I don't know what, but I didn't see any where I live, but I think they were mainly happening in South Jersey. I live closer to New York. So, but it was creepy. I mean, I was like, I'm usually not creeped out by anything, but I'm like, what the heck is this? Technology creeps me out. I swear I was supposed to have been born in like the 50s and someone made a mistake. I mean, people say it to me all the time. They're like, Gemma, the 60s would have loved you. I'm like, great, I know. But here I am, right? Terrified of technology.
See, it kind of makes you wonder if they're almost like trying to pull them in and try to get their attention because it seems like a lot of the UFO stuff is just really, really out there. Like nobody wants to believe it. Even the people that are into the UFO stuff, it's like you look
Mm-hmm.
at it and it's more of like a joke than anything. But ironically, like on the flip side, we also got all this weird stuff going on with AI where it's like we went from, all right, these models essentially can't do anything. And now you have all these videos where people are supposedly like giving these models like bodies and they're starting to interact and everything. And I don't know how much validity there is to it. I know people can program things and it can just be a program simply that they're running. But on the flip side of it, maybe it's a matter of like, all right, we're getting to this point with our technology where, we might get ourselves into trouble with it. So maybe if we kind of like say, hey, aliens and kind of poke at them, maybe they'll come, maybe they'll show their faces and they'll kind of help us out here a little bit before we get ourselves too far backed into a corner.
Yeah, I mean, I have heard many times that they're very concerned with a lot of the things we're doing. If you believe in Atlantis, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you don't, I always tell people you don't have to believe a word I say. Just be open-minded because I'm going to be open-minded with you and I'll never discount anyone's encounter or story of what they've been through. That's your experience. But I know for a fact, I know. I can't prove it, but I know that that is exactly what happened with Atlantis. They just got so technologically advanced, and I also believe very strongly that the alien grays, I believe it's the tall grays. I could have it backwards though. It's in one of my books. Um, they were like us, but they became so dependent on technology, getting implants and this and that, almost like the show Fringe. I don't know if you ever seen it, but like the people from the other world that like take over or whatever. I love that show.
I was
But
almost going to
they
relate it to like the Borgs
the
where they started
observers.
becoming like a hive mind concept like the Borgs
They
from Star
did.
Trek.
There was no love, no emotion. They couldn't reproduce. They tore up the planet, destroyed the planet, and they had to go live underground, which is kind of why they look the way that they do. And now they're very interested in us, not just for our planet. maybe to coexist with us. There are many planets like Earth out in the universe, and other, there are many dimensions. Even science has backed up the fact that there's an infinite number of dimensions. Would it read the only intelligent life anywhere? Like it's just, again, it's so huge to try and comprehend and break down, but at the end of the day, I do think about it. Like, I believe the short grays are like they're very militant if you look at encounters, and again, I could have it backwards, and they don't really have emotion. They're just there to do what they do, kind of like the reptilians. But then the other ones, it's like I could see how, why they'd be abducting us and taking bodily fluids and doing all these things, because number one, they're concerned about us, but number two, why do we have hybrid programs? Because they can no longer procreate.
See, this is where you get into so many different like loops of thought with these things that
I know.
I mean, either one, there's the idea that they're us from the future, or on the other side of it, there's the idea of the whole multidimensional concept that if multiple things are existing in the same area at the same time, maybe that's where their interest comes into nuclears because that's something that would affect them also. Because there's a lot of different theories where these things are coming from. There, I've heard the underground theories, I've heard the multidimensional theory, of course, the extraterrestrial theory.
I think
But
they're
it
all
seems to
true.
me, yeah, it seems to me like it's more something that's closer to Earth than we think it is. And like you said, even if it's ultra terrestrial, if these things are coming from this other layer of reality that's existing in the same place in the universe, then if you're doing something nuclear where it's splitting particles, then that seems like it would be something that would burst into something that would exist as another reality in that same area. So like maybe their interest specifically is only the things that also affect them. Or on the flip side of it, it's a matter of like, again, they're us from the future and they're trying to preserve their DNA. And that same concept could still kind of come into play if you kind of view the
Yeah.
idea of time not necessarily being linear. It could be that they're us from the future existing in the same location, but again, with time not necessarily being linear, it's like multiple events are all happening at the same place at once, but
And
we
I do
can't
believe that.
see or perceive that from our perspective because we're in the timeline, we're in the river.
I do not believe time's linear, and I've been told by my spirit team and by other like time is not linear. I've been told time and again, that's something I intrinsically know and believe. It doesn't mean anyone else has to, because just like with most things in this community or things that I go through and see and deal with, I can't bring you something and say, here's the proof. I can only tell you my experience and what I know, right? What I've been through, what I've heard, what I've learned. But it's interesting you brought up things happening, like, when we think of the other side, a lot of people either think heaven, or if you don't specifically think heaven, you think up. No, did you ever hear someone, and I see it all the time, where people like, I saw my Aunt May and she died last year, but she was floating at the foot of my bed. No, she wasn't floating. She's existing on a different plane that's a little bit higher vibrating than us. The other side is around us, just on a different plane, and they vibrate higher. So they're going to be more elevated. So they always look like they're floating for the most part, unless they make themselves not look that way, right? Unless they want to stomp around or whatever it is that they're doing. But if somebody has crossed over, they will usually appear to be floating. And that's because the other side is not up. The other side is all around us, which is why when I say there's spiritual warfare, I walk down the street and I see, perfect example. I'm going to tell you a quick story about what I mean with spiritual warfare, because a lot of people ask me about that. I go to a doctor once a month to get maintenance medication because I'm a recovering addict. So I went to it's a hospital here in New Jersey where they have a full detox rehab, everything. So I'll tell it as quickly as I can. This guy showed up to the IOP, the intensive outpatient, drunk or high or something, and I saw it right away, right? So I knew the counselor was going to notice. So I stood the counselor. I'm talking to the counselor. The guy comes bumbling up, sagging, stirring, slurring, and the counselor asked me if I could step aside. I said okay. So I back up a little bit. I'm vaping, but I'm keeping my eye. The guy, this demonic thing popped out of the side of his shoulder and started dumping buckets of tar, what looked to me like tar, over his head. Now, not physically, the guy wasn't getting wet or covered in tar, but his spirit. What I came to understand was that this was shame. The guy was, I guess, asked to leave. When he turned to walk away, the demon thing looked at me and kind of like smirked, and I looked away, like, I can't see you. I don't know why you're looking at me. But it was kind of leaning in, like it was saying something to him. And I saw these little pop bubbles of like a syringe, a bottle of alcohol, pills. It was telling him, like, don't you feel embarrassed? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? You might as well just go all in. That's what people, everybody deals with. Whether if it's not demonic, it's a lower vibrational attachment. We all deal with this day by day by day unless we know how to protect our energy, cleanse and clear our spaces, and be really, really aware and mindful of what's going on around us. That to me is spiritual warfare. There's angels and demons fighting. Yeah, I mean, I've seen that every once in a while, but the main thing is our actual souls and spirits are being abused in that way and torn down and torn apart by these lower vibrational and sometimes demonic entities to hurt ourselves.
I mean, I've even kind of heard just a continuation off of that, and at least I've seen it from my own perspective and for a lot of people that research into this stuff. I mean, part of the warfare too seems to be to pull you away from the path of what you're doing. Like, if you're somebody that talks about this type of stuff, or somebody that researches this type of stuff, like it seems like weird things will start falling in your lap that'll just seem like they're really, really hard trying to pull you left away from
Mm-hmm.
talking or away from like your show or whatever you're doing. And it seems to be this like common thing with podcasters that they'll be like really in this swing, really, really diving hard into this one specific topic, and they feel like they're really hitting hard with it and really get somewhere with it. Then all of a sudden it'll be like, all right, my computer, this weird thing happened, my entire basement flooded out and it destroyed all my equipment. Or on the other flip side, they'll have something happen where, I got into an accident when I was on my way home from work. And now, I'm not going to be able to do my show for a while because I have to focus on doing this other stuff to try to get myself better. Like, it seems like when you really start getting somewhere with it, they do these things to pull you away from things. And even beyond podcasters, just people researching things. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure that people diving into the Bible enough, they'll hit those like particular verses. They'll be like, all right, I really feel like I'm getting somewhere with this. And then right after that, they'll start having this weird chain of like bad events that happen. And it's not necessarily like to do anything other than to just pull them away from
To
what they're
distract.
diving into, to distract you away from that because they
Yeah.
don't want that information out there.
I'm actually surprised that I was thinking about that when right before we started because I was turning my lights on and suddenly my lights aren't working properly now. And I'm like, I'm so surprised. I would have bet that the minute I brought up the BEK, some audio went out or something. It happens. It happens. I do pre-recorded videos once a week on my YouTube channel, and if I'm talking about the BEK or something really serious, the MIB,
I get it with
I'll leave it in
reptilians
too.
almost every time.
I will leave it in. And there's been so many times, reptilians, MIB, BEK, where I'll be like, oh, notice, guys, my lights just went off. Or the last 5 minutes will cut out. Or something will be different than what I recorded. And I know what it is. But I try to tell people, could you imagine, like, you can't see this happening. So when you start to feel that way, just try to keep it in your head. Like, it's not me, right? Like this is being done to me and I can get away from this by not allowing myself to be so distracted because I feel so bad for people like that guy. What if he went and relapsed and died or, overdosed or something happened to him and he had no idea that buckets of shame were being poured on him or that he had a literal demon whispering in his ear to go and use. It's crazy and it makes me so sad, which is why I try to help people and connect them with whatever is going on with them. And I send out boxes of things and instructions how to use them to get rid of them and sever those ties. And, you know, because it's important to me because I feel like we need more people on the side of the light. And that doesn't necessarily mean God or Jesus. For me, that's what it is. But I just want people to break from the darkness and to understand there's something way bigger than this human experience that we're going to live over and over and over again until we learn everything we need to learn.
I mean, half the problem with the learning is that I feel like a lot of people are scared to dive into the dark, not realizing that in order to understand the dark and actually not fear the dark, like you have to dive into it. You have to understand where it's coming from. So everybody wants to stay in this light area and be
Mm-hmm.
safe in this light, happy, comfortable place, not realizing that it's going to be do you a lot more just and do you a lot better to understand the dark. Because it's kind of like even people diving into like dark psychology. There's two aspects of it. There's the people that are
Yeah.
diving into it with the intention of using it on other people. And then there's the people that dive into it. And now that they understand how it works, now nobody can pull those things over on them again. And that's the concept that people need to have with this is that, it doesn't matter what religious background you're coming from. It doesn't matter if you don't agree with whatever particular person's philosophy. If you understand their philosophy, then you no longer fear it. And if you have to deal with something that's, on that other side, then at least you know what you're dealing with and you're not just completely out of luck when you're dealing with it. Like, as scary as it is, like people need to address the dark. And that even goes for your own mental. I mean, people are scared to be alone with their own thoughts, but at the end of the day, you'll never learn more about yourself or actually get to a point where you feel comfortable with yourself unless you just throw yourself in the dark with yourself. Like, people need to stop fearing the dark. You have to understand the dark.
Absolutely. And I know we're about to end, but I do want to say one thing about that. I want people, and I tell my clients and my friends and the people who come into my streams on my channel, remember that you are a light being, right? We are literally made up of light. And it sounds, again, cliche and corny, but love. So shine your light into the darkness, right? Walk in knowing that you're covered and protected as this spiritual, very high vibrating being. We're kind of trapped within the third dimensional realm, but that doesn't mean we can't put our energy out there and do really great things, right? So for me, it's like I'm not really scared of much because I know where I stand. I know that I'm connected to something bigger than this. So shine your light into the dark, don't be afraid of it because the more fear you give it, the more you feed it. And I've told people too, what can I do about sleep paralysis and shadow entities? I say it in my book, summon all the courage you have and laugh. When you laugh, they don't even have features and they will look confused and they'll leave because you're not feeding them, you're not giving them what they want.
I mean, just to show how strong we actually potentially are. Like, if these things have an interest in us and they're coming from other realities, other dimensions in order to come to suck our energy out or do whatever they want to do to us, I mean, that just shows how much potential that we have and how strong we actually are. And even within like your own viewpoints, I don't know if it has to do specifically with the words or the intention behind it or what, but
Hmm.
it seems like even people that aren't necessarily full hard believers, if you kind of still have it in your heart and you kind of have like a feel for it, a lot of these
You're
people will like
open.
call out to Jesus in these situations and these things will
Hmm.
dissipate and disappear. And like I said, it just shows like how much strength that we actually have. Like, there's no reason to fear these things because clearly these things fear us. It's almost like the idea of us that we're fascinated with tigers. We're going to poke them, but as soon as that tiger starts to chase us back, yeah, we're going to take off and we're going to cut tail. Like you know.
So right. That's so right. I've almost never met a dark, spirit. And I talk about those on my channel. Most people I meet, even if they're bad people, we get contracted to do things. Some of the worst serial killers, they were contracted with their victims, with God or the creator of the universe to do those things. They're not going to be punished on the other side. They're light beings. Very, very rarely do I meet someone that doesn't have light, that they're just wandering aimlessly. Those are the dangerous people. So you're a light, be open and be, aware.
Well, I guess those were some great words of wisdom, but I'm still
Yes.
probably going to put you on the spot and see if I can get some more words of wisdom out of you. So, before we wrap everything up, I like to end the show with words of wisdom. So, if there was any words of wisdom that you might like to bestow on the listeners today, what might it be?
I would say definitely laugh in the face of fear because 99% of the time, if it's something there that is making you fearful and you laugh, it's kind of like you turn it off, right? Laugh in the face of fear and be really mindful and aware of your surroundings. That's really important.
Ain't that the truth? And if
Yours is
any,
not. There is no try.
yeah. Otherwise, you're going to end up becoming part of somebody else's story to take another line from
For sure.
another
For
great
sure.
writer.
For sure.
And speaking of writers, considering that you are a writer and you have a plethora of wonderful books, I don't know if you want to just kind of run off a list of all the books that you might have as a selection that people can choose from, but let people know where they can find your books at. Let people know where they might be able to contact you for your medium abilities. And yeah, just let everybody know where they can find you on the internet.
Okay, so my YouTube channel is just called Gemma Jade. It's my name. I live stream every Friday night at 7:15 p.m. Eastern time, and I do read Oracle for anyone who comes into the chat. It's a card. I let you know what your couple weeks are going to be like. That's the main thing I'm doing right now. I'm on TikTok, Instagram as Gemma Jade YT, Facebook as Gemma Jade. So I'm branching out on social medias. As far as my books, you can find them by going to Amazon and typing in Gemma Jade books. There's 14 of them. They're available on Kindle, paperback, and Audible. My newest one is Encounters with Evil Volume 2. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's 51 stories, true stories of that people have sent to me that I found on the internet, or even some famous ones thrown in there as well. I have a book called Missing the Fae Theory, where I talk about the missing 411 stuff in my first book ever in regards to how the fae could be or fairies could possibly be connected to that phenomenon. Then there's Encounters with Evil Part 1, Shadow Entities, Sleep Paralysis, and Beyond. Danger at Your Door, Terrifying Encounters with Black Eyed Kids. And people loved that one so much, they wanted more encounters. So then I did a companion book of just encounters, no research, like just the encounters, no theories, called Midnight Visitors. Campfire Stories, Volume 1, 2, and 3. Those are listener encounters. Those are what my subscribers have sent me about their experiences in the woods. Gone, Mysterious Disappearances, Volume 1 through 5, where I talk about real disappearances that cannot possibly be anything other than otherworldly or supernatural. And then I use my mediumship abilities at the end for like a paragraph to talk about what I really think happened in those unsolved cases. And that's my book collection. There's 14, Audible, Kindle, paperback. The best way to reach me, the only way really, is Gemma Jade Paranormal at gmail.com or on my socials in the comments. I don't do PMs or DMs or IMs. I just do email. And if you need something from me, I'll give you my number and we can text about it. I mean, that's it. Just show some support on the channel. That's the main thing for me.
Man, I already have some more stuff I'm going to want to dive into with you next time because you brought up
Come
the
back
Fae and the missing
anytime.
411 connection. And my other show, Bizarre Encounters, my co host and I are constantly diving into these Fae connections with UFO phenomenon, with the cryptid phenomenon, with literally all the phenomenon. So we'll
Yeah,
definitely have to come back for another round because you sparked my
absolutely. This
interest
was
at the
so
end
much
there.
fun. So much fun.
And again, I appreciate you making the time to come on today. Really, really looking forward to next time.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, it was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks a lot.